Welcome back to Sci-Fi Wire's live stage here at Emerald City Comicon. I am here with the creators from the Headlocked comic, Michael Kingston and Michel Mulipola.
Yep.
Thank you so much for being here on the stage with me, guys.
Thanks so much for having us. I mean, I always appreciate anybody that lets us, put our word out in the world.
So, I didn't realize until I started working in a comic book store that the Venn diagram between comic book fans and wrestling fans is basically a circle. At what point did you realize that that was the case?
So I've been a wrestling fan, a comic book fan since I was 8 years old, and nobody ever made any good wrestling comics. This is Undertaker fighting demons, and Kevin Nash as Mad Max, and the Ultimate Warriors stripping Santa Claus naked, and whatever. They were just never about wrestling. So at some point, I kind of understood that nobody was ever going to make the comic book that I wanted to read as a wrestling fan. So we made it ourselves, and it's Headlocked.
At what point did you get involved?
I got involved 2011, 2012.
10, I think. Right?
Yeah.
That's when I met you.
Yeah, so I'm from New Zealand. And I actually met Michael Kingston at San Diego Comic-Con. And as a professional wrestler, as well as a comic book artist, I kind of showed him my stuff, and he absolutely loved it. And we've been working ever since, working together on Headlocked, as well as WWE comics ever since.
What are your artistic influences? Like, what were you reading that got you into drawing comics?
The usual 90s X-Men stuff, so like Silvestri, Jim Lee, all those kind of guys. As I got older, my tastes have kind of changed in terms of artistic influences. But yeah, definitely as a kid growing up was that 90s X-Men, late 80s, 90s X-Men stuff that really kind of inspired me to follow the dream of being a comic book artist.
What about you? What were you reading growing up?
I think I had I liked superhero stuff. Claremont X-Men is what kind of got me into comics, and then go to college, and then you don't have time for it. And then I got back into it when I got out of college, and then I sort of discovered the thing. It's a weird influence, I think, but the thing that made me want to write comics was Concrete. Paul Chadwick's Concrete.
There's nothing weird about that. That's one of the greatest comics ever written.
So I met Paul Chadwick, and I think Paul Chadwick thinks it's weird that Concrete made me want to write a wrestling comic. But I love Concrete, and that was what got me into And then I started sort of understanding like all the different genres of comics and whatnot, or stories in different genres, and that's I almost don't read any superhero stuff anymore, but I read tons of comics.
Do you remember the first wrestling match you ever saw?
Yeah, absolutely.
What was it?
So I was flipping channels, and I saw the first Saturday Night's Main Event, and it was George the Animal Steel that got me to stop flipping channels. He was going crazy doing his turnbuckle thing, and he's covered in hair, and he's bald, and he's going nuts. And little did I know that would be a glimpse into my future as a human being. But at the time, I had never seen anything like it, and I've been watching ever since. My entire life.
How did you get into wrestling?
I got into wrestling, funnily enough, through comics.
Explain that.
Yep.
Elaborate.
So, as a huge fan of comic books, I always wanted to see comics brought to life. And this was like in the 80s, the rock and wrestling kind of age. And so as a kid growing up, wrestling was the closest thing to real life comic books that I'd ever seen. And so, the bright colors, the bold characters, the good versus evil, all kinds of...
Hulk versus Macho Man Randy Savage.
Yeah, that kind of thing. And so that's how I fell in love with pro wrestling, because of comic books. And then I started getting an understanding of it and appreciating the art form of pro wrestling. But initially, my love of pro wrestling came through comics.
And you said at the top, and this is, I think, is accurate, other than a couple little indie books that I've seen, that there really weren't wrestling comics that were truly about wrestling, or the stories that I think wrestling fans wanted to see. So what, in your mind, when you were going into it, what was the story that you felt was missing, that you said, I have to fill that hole?
So if you're a fan of wrestling, you have to defend it to 50% of the people you know. It's a very...
Not if you work in comics, friend.
Right.
But I understand.
Yeah, it's a very polarizing thing. People either love it or they hate it. So, I wanted to tell a story where people could see wrestling through my eyes. So we created this character, Mike Hartman, who is a theater major in college, who sort of has the stereotypical bad attitude about wrestling, and then he goes to a show kind of against his will, and he falls in love with it, to the point that he quits school, and it's and the story is his journey through the wrestling business, starting on day zero, so you can sort of, experience what it, the art form of wrestling and sort of see it through the eyes of a performance artist. And so that to me is my, you're sort of hiding the medicine in the food, so to speak. If you can tell a fun story, and it's, the girl gets off the bus in Hollywood story, only it's with wrestling. And if you can tell an entertaining story, you kind of sneaky educate people that, oh wow, there's more to wrestling than I ever thought, possible. It's not just oiled up hairless dudes pretending to hit each other. There's a real art form to it.
And obviously the key to doing that is to go to people who know. And that is a thing that you have both done quite a bit. Can you talk about some of the names? Because there's a laundry list of them, but first of all, how do you even actually manage to make that happen? And then second of all, what does the process become like?
So when I first started Headlocked, I didn't have anybody attached. It was just me and Artist Alley selling comic books. And, a lot of wrestlers would be at the Comic-Cons just as fans. And they bought my books, like Hurricane, Rob Van Dam, Christopher Daniels. And, then they wrote back to me to tell me how much they liked it. And then I sent a cold email to Jerry the King Lawler through his website. Like I forgot I did it after I did it. Like it was such a lark.
Wait, how long was the wait? I love that concept. Was it like 6 months, a year?
No, a couple weeks.
Wow.
And then, he said, send me some books. So I mailed him some books. And then like a week later, he called me on the phone. I mean, honestly, like if it wasn't his voice, wasn't so distinctive, I would assume somebody was playing a joke on me.
I mean, he's kind of unmistakable.
Right. And so he agreed to do the covers for my books, and we started doing shows. And then from there, it just, the wrestlers who like comics come and find me. They're like, hey, I want to do a comic, and I want to do stories. And, some people, I'm on the road every weekend trying to make Headlocked a thing. Like, we're funded through Kickstarter. We don't sell our stuff in comic book stores. Like, everything is just 100% grassroots, so I'm out every weekend trying to make this thing happen. And, I think a lot of wrestlers appreciate my hustle, and, they'll come to my booth, and, they see the passion behind what we're doing. Like, I mean, obviously, like I work 60 hours a week at a regular job, and then every weekend I'm gone on the road doing this. And I think, when you're doing something out of passion, I think you can't fake that. Like, and I think that's the thing that I think we sell. I mean, obviously, Mikel's passionate about wrestling and comics. I'm passionate about wrestling and comics. Like, I think that's the difference between that and, Undertaker fighting demons.